Our next speaker is Dr. Jenny Radetzky, who will be presenting Gamified Childhood, How to Guide Parents Through the World of Interactive Media. Dr. Radetzky is a developmental behavioral pediatrician and assistant professor of pediatrics at the University of Michigan Medical School. Her research focuses on the use of mobile interactive technology by parents and young children and how this relates to child self-regulation and parent-child interaction. Clinically, her work focuses on developmental and behavioral conditions in low-income and underserved populations. Dr. Radetzky was lead author of the 2016 AAP Guidelines on Media Use by Young Children. Please welcome Dr. Jenny Radetzky.
Hi, everyone. Oh my gosh. Wow. Hey, I'm so happy to be here. I'm Jenny Radetzky. I'm really excited to be able to present on the main stage. This is really thrilling, and I really wanted to thank the NCE Planning Committee for letting me represent some of the work that we've done on the Council on Communications and Media. I do have, surprisingly, for a developmental behavioral pediatrician, I have some conflicts of interest to disclose. I've just joined the board of directors at Melissa & Doug Toys, and I'm a paid consultant for them. I'm not going to be talking about any of their products or even toys in general during today's talk. So my goal today is that I really want to demystify this new digital environment that our kids and us as adults are constantly immersed in. I really want you to understand and take away from this talk why you should care about the design of these media environments. I want you to feel like you understand some of these design tricks that really constrain what kids are doing online or mismatch with some of their developmental needs, and then to be able to more effectively support some of your patients to choose more positive experiences both online and offline. Before I get started on this little public health part of my talk, I'm going to make an odd request during a technology talk. I want all of you who are holding a phone, look at your phone and think about your own adult gamified digital environment. We have to recognize that we are living in a similar sort of gamified, persuasive environment if we're going to be able to fix the one that kids are trying to navigate. So look at your phone. Which are the apps that make you feel happy? You know, the pictures, the FaceTime that you talked with your kids, you know. And then think about which of the apps just you don't always come away with the best feeling from. Which one of them's, you know, make you feel sucked in and you're not even really sure why. Those are the aspects of persuasive and gamified design that our children's little brains are fighting against as well. So it's good for us as adults to build some reflection into our relationships with our devices. Okay, now put your devices away. We're gonna have screen-free time, 15 minutes. Everyone, pediatricians, I know you're sweating. Don't live tweet me. Seriously, write down, if you like what I'm saying, write it down with a piece of paper. And you know, if you don't like what I'm saying, then talk to me afterwards, face to face. I really think we need to reflect on how our gamified digital environment changes the way we communicate, we think, we process information, and we relax. Okay, so on to the meat of the talk. This is Tom Frieden's health impact pyramid. I think it's a really important framework for thinking about our AAP guidelines and what impact they can have, right? I was so fortunate to be part of the teams writing the 2016 guidelines I focused on young children. And that's the top of the pyramid. That is the counseling and education that really requires a lot of individual effort to talk to a parent, counsel them, and then expecting each and individual parent to go home and make a change in their household. That takes so much individual effort, and it doesn't always have the greatest population impact. So I've become very focused on changing the context, the digital environment, to make individuals' default decisions healthy. Now, Tom Frieden, when he was talking about this, it was things like, can we remove trans fats from all the food in New York City so that everybody isn't getting that heart, cardiovascular risk, and everyone doesn't have to go and check, the ingredients on what they're eating. It just makes it easier to make a health impact. And what I'm thinking about is how can we change and reprogram the zeros and ones that have gone into children's digital media environments so that it's easier for them to be socially and emotionally healthy. So how could we design the ideal digital environment for kids? This guy can really lead us. He is probably the smartest person when thinking about kids and media. Fred Rogers, he just took like painstaking thought when he was planning out his program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He worked with developmental psychologists. He would plan out his scripts so that he made sure that none of his words would mislead or that children would misunderstand what he was saying. He paid attention to the fact that there was a lot of social upheaval at the time that he was making Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he would integrate that into the storyline so that kids could not only understand themselves, but they could understand how they fit into their larger world. So what would he think of the App Store? I really don't know. I mean, my lab at the University of Michigan has been studying apps, kids' apps, how they're designed, how they're marketed. If you search for animal hair salon, you get 18 pages of gimmicky, gendered, just apps that are often packed with data trackers. Lots of them have ads. And Mr. Rogers talked about how kids were being bombarded with all this extra drama that they didn't need. Life is dramatic enough for a little kid who's learning how to separate from mom at preschool, or learning how to ride a tricycle. So I really love the idea of using this framework of his criteria of what should we think of when we're thinking about how to design children's digital media environments. So here's what he said. Imagination comes first. It's through relationships that we grow best and learn best. Every child needs a complete and healthy play diet. And he's talking about quiet play, active play, sleep, and that we can turn it off and we can show kids that it's not the end all be all of our daily lives. So I'm going to go through each of these criteria and use some examples from my research to show how many forms of digital media, not all, but many, are really mismatching with these child developmental needs, mostly because the digital media environment right now is heavily focused on marketing. It's heavily focused on promoting engagement for longer periods of time because that's how they make ad revenue. So when it comes to imagination, what do kids need? How do children build their minds and expand them? The scholars who talk about children's imagination say, to build imagination, kids need to learn, they need to have the room to expand and fail. They need to have their brain take the lead and decide what to do next, and have to process the stresses of their day, the things they're most worried about, the things they're most excited about. It's really about the child having autonomy and control. And so what we're finding in our analysis of children's apps is that there's not much control because the design is so constrained. We call it closed loop design. You tap a barn, you see a cat. You tap a barn, you see a cat. It happens over and over for every different letter. It's just this over repetitive, simple task that is not really the same thing as the expanses of what children can create on their own. It also sometimes gives children, perhaps, teaches them informally that the answers are within technology, the answers are not within themselves. So I think we're excited to be studying how these kind of closed loop and constrained designs of the digital environment might affect children's creativity as they're growing up. We're seeing a lot of monetization of children's digital play as well. This is Blueberry Muffin, who wants you to cook a cake in a very particular way, but one of her ingredients is locked, and you have to pay 99 cents or $1.99 for it. So this is such a common occurrence in the apps that we're seeing, especially the free apps. And it's become this way. I mean, if you Google, and do an internet search for child app monetization, you'll get lots of websites of companies that make it their job to help app developers get money by persuading a child based on, and really trying to constrain what that child can do. As a side note, I love cooking with children It's not like this. It's never as easy as this. Cooking is so messy. Cooking is what all of our patients can do with their kids regardless of income, because cooking is so, wrapped up in families' meaning systems. And when I make waffles with my kids, it's like impulse inhibition is just, and planning and organization is all there so that they don't stick their hands into the flour and create a mess. And we get this really satisfying end product that's a meal to eat together. So it's just a very different experience than some of these really constrained examples. There's a lot of really hyper salient bells and whistles in children's apps too. And so one of the ways that they, grab a child's attention and engage it is just to have everything be so full of audio and visual effects. And compared to this, the natural world seems pretty boring. But it's actually really important to be creative and to use your imagination. You have to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. And so, many parents are telling me he's just not interested in any of the other stuff because it's just so ordinary. It's not just taking his brain from one place to the next, with all the visual stimuli. The difference between, watching a TV show that's one unidirectional and you're just getting a message or a story told to you, and an interactive app is often that there are rewards, tons of rewards that are very gimmicky built into children's apps. So this is a screenshot, after you've done some sort of math problem, you get balloons, you get fireworks, you get cheers, you get a parade, you get all of these things, you get aliens cheering for you. This doesn't happen in real life. Real rewards are subtle sometimes. They just are an internal sense of accomplishment. So the packing of rewards into children's interactive media right now does create this artificial expectation that after you solve the problem, you'll get some sort of reinforcement. I want kids to have their own internal motivation for doing things, not always to be prompt and reward driven. Now, this is just an example of one of the sort of apps that gamifies every step of feeding a child. So you get coins for stirring things. You get coins for feeding this baby. Don't you wish feeding a baby were this simple and you got a cha-ching every time you put it in their mouth? Like, this is just the kind of oversimplification and repetitive nature of a lot of the apps that we've been studying. There's also some encouragements of self-display, like the Kid Excellence Award is granted. Share your progress on social media. So, one of the reasons that apps do this and want people to share their progress on social media is that then they can get Facebook data that shares with the app, and it's this kind of hard to understand relationship that they have. But it's also setting up this norm that children have to share and display all of their accomplishments rather than sitting with it or building their own internal working model of who they are and what they mean to the rest of the world. Okay, so I've gone through imagination. And as someone who's been trained in early childhood and infant mental health, I really agree with Fred Rogers about how important early relationships are. It's through relationships that we learn best and grow best. But I want to show a few stills from our recent research that was funded by the APA Young Investigator Award. Please don't take any photos because these were shared very generously by our participants. So what my mentee, Tiffany Munzer, did is she set up a lab experiment where she had families read a print book with their toddler, a tablet-based book, or an interactive ebook. And the body language differences between the interactive ebook and the print book were so different. Parents found it harder to engage with the child whose attention was being managed by all those interactive hotspots. For the print book, there was a lot more of this reciprocal body language of really sharing around the object compared to, like in this case, where children create their own little space around the object. Children really think of tablets as this solitary activity. It's not that same shared feeling that you get when you're snuggling and reading a book. So with these different design affordances that interactive media have, often there's more control struggles than there is a shared joint attention and reciprocal, warm, and responsive interaction. I'm going to show a little bit of data suggesting that interactive media makes it hard to have a complete and healthy play diet, especially when it comes to sleep or other activities that we want little kids to have to be able to just optimally develop. There's a lot of kind of sticky or engagement promoting design in kids' apps. In this one, if you come back every day and play with your virtual grandparents, you can have a new present every day. And I've actually had arguments with my 10-year-old when he wanted to come back and play FIFA Mobile every day because he was going to get some new player every day. These sort of design features are so hard for kids to resist, and they can really undermine a parent who wants their child to have other activities. We've been tracking toddlers' tablet use in a study that I've funded from NICHD right now. We have an app that gives us second-by-second output of what kids are doing, and they're mostly doing YouTube. This is kids who watch YouTube main. We averaged all of their hourly viewing and aggregated them over the sample. And you can see there's a lot of YouTube viewing into the evening and overnight hours. So this suggests that kids are using YouTube to fall asleep or perhaps to stay asleep. And I really want to talk about the problems here. Falling asleep, as Brazelton said, is like one of the biggest tasks of childhood, of learning how to calm your mind down, calm your body down, and be able to do your own self-regulation. And it's really hard when kids are now using external regulators to help keep them calm or quiet during lots of different daily routines. So this makes it hard to turn it off. The fact that we have autoplay and algorithmic feeds that give children such tailored content. And it's also, what's really hard for parents to understand, and all of you to understand too, is data collection, right? So this is an app that was played in our study called Peekaboo ICU. It seems really benign, but we've been tracking the data traces that come from the apps that kids are playing. And this one shares these persistent identifiers with a third party called Chartboost. And Chartboost then helps conglomerate across these persistent identifiers, what is this child's digital footprint or this user's preferences? The reason I worry about this is that we have some pretty vulnerable kids that we care for. We have kids with impulse control problems, high levels of anxiety, body dysmorphic issues. They search, and the things they look for on YouTube, the things that they play on their apps are really gonna create a digital phenotype of who they are and what their vulnerabilities are. And that can be used to offer them e-cigarette ads. It can be used to offer them more violent video game ads. And this is something that we really need to think about in terms of how our digital environment is designed. So this is kind of a bummer talk, and I'm sorry. It is really a lot of the less positive things that we are finding in our research. But here's what you can do in practice, okay? I really want to encourage parents to be informed consumers. Don't just think this tidal wave of technology, there's nothing you can do about it. They can check Common Sense Media to see if the apps are worth their kids' time. They can, I have grilled PBS Kids and Sesame Workshop to say, like, do you collect data? What are you doing? What are your practices? And they are still carrying on Fred Rogers' really great ideas about how tech should be designed. So if parents want alternatives, that's what you should be encouraging. And then tell them, remind them, the other activities that help your children actually build the core life skills that they need, taking a walk, cooking dinner, dancing, singing, telling you a story, they don't collect data. They don't do any of these manipulative design techniques. So remind them that those old-fashioned types of behaviors really are the ones that are going to be most nourishing. And I'm also proud to be part of some of the AAP advocacy that's been really trying to work with Congress for more privacy and design regulation. While I wrap up, here's just a few things you can look into if you're interested in this topic. Five Rights Foundation and Common Sense Media are two leaders in this field. And I'll leave you with the quote that Fred Rogers said to Congress in 1969. And this is especially important because we're in a moment where there's a lot more social and emotional issues amongst our patients. There's a lot more mental health issues amongst adolescents. And we need a digital environment that helps them understand their own minds, that helps them develop secure relationships, that helps them sleep, that helps them to know how to critically evaluate the information that they're given. They also need a digital environment that isn't just rewarding the fact that they may be distracting themselves from their emotions when they're feeling distressed. So I just loved what he said. If we can make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service for mental health. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it.